Hello, welcome everybody to the Digital Writers Festival 2018. This session is presented by the Other Film Festival and it's titled Disability. So I'm Fiona Tuomy and I'm the executive producer of the Other Film Festival 2018, and I'm honoured to be hosting this panel, which I hope you'll all get a lot out of. And with me in actually in Arts Access Victoria in Melbourne is Caroline Bowditch.
Hello.
Executive Director of Arts Access Victoria, but also a well-known artist as well, renowned disability arts leader, I'm going to call you, but also a dancer and choreographer. Is that kind of more unsure, but enough?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then in Sydney, we have Emily Dash, who is, well, you're many things, but you're a writer, a screenwriter, actor, and you work across both screen and theatre. Is that kind of a...
That's me in a nutshell, yeah.
Welcome, Emily. And also here in Melbourne, down in beautiful, when you say Bayside, sunny Brighton, is Adi.
Or Brightonia, yes.
Now, I've known you for a long time, Adi, and let me try and get your surname right. I'll probably say it wrong. Djajamihardja?
Okay, repeat after me. Djajamihardja. Djajamihardja.
Thank you, Adi. And you are a producer of film and television.
Correct.
A creator and a developer.
Yes.
And I think you describe yourself too as sometimes as re-emerging. Is that
correct? Yes, very much a post-stroke re-emerger.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about yourself, or is that a good intro?
That's very fair intro, very fair and flattering. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So before we really get into the session, I'd also just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. I pay my respects to the elders past and present, and the elders from other communities who may also be watching or listening today. So first off, I just thought I'd just give a little brief background on the Other Film Festival. The first festival happened back in 2004. It was very much set up as a kind of, and where the word other came from too, is that it was sort of seen as a kind of, not alternative, but countermeasure to what was happening in the mainstream screen world around, for, filmmakers with disability, but also, also most importantly about access issues. So the other thing with the film festival, everything is captioned and has live audio description, and it's kind of very much seen as a leader both here and internationally in terms of those exemplary sort of access standards. And we still see the mainstream screen world not always totally embracing those access requirements in terms of cinema. So really what we're here to do today is talk about the now, and it's actually quite an exciting time in the kind of screen sector, certainly from the perspective of I think for disability voices and for other marginalised voices, because I feel like we're finally, being heard and being listened to, and space is being made, and that, we importantly can take over space. And just to start off, I thought with Emily and Adi, Emily, because you're up in Sydney, you've had the great privilege of being part of Screenability in a few different forms. So do you want to talk a little bit about that to us?
Yeah, right. So there are about 2 or 3 things that are called Screenability that I've been involved in. One was the funding that I received from Metro Screen back in, I think, 2015 to make my debut short film, I'm Not a Work of Art. So that was a suite of about 8 films that got made through Metro Screen. But the next thing that I was involved in that was titled Screenability was the Screenability Internship Program, which was a great internship program where artists and creatives with disabilities were matched with film and television production companies across the sector. And that was a training opportunity aligned with whatever your skill set and your goals were. So for me, I was matched with Matchbox Pictures primarily as an emerging screenwriter and researcher, which was a great opportunity.
No, and thank you for that. And we'll talk in more detail about some other projects that have come out of that as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's been a few different things that's happened nationally as well through Screen Australia, and we were both part of the inaugural developer program. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what that maybe meant for you?
You talking to me, Fiona?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it was it meant the world to me because as a stroke fellow who has his own creative urges, I've been really working towards finding an outlet to nourish my soul and return to work, not just as not simply as to generate income again for my family, but also to be able to express myself and nourish my own soul. So that was a very game-changing event for me, because I was able to see that I still do have a place in creative media, and as hubris as this sounds, I still feel that my best years are still ahead of me.
Excellent.
So yeah, so learning that the learnings I gained from that workshop course really gave me the comfort and confidence to launch my return to work project, which I'll talk about more later.
Great, thanks, Adi. So that program, Develop the Developer, Screen Australia ran both last year and they did another one this year. And as I said, I was a part of that as well with Adi last year.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, a developer in the screen world is pretty much you are like a script editor or a script consultant, but it's more than that, in that you're also looking at audience. You're looking at kind of the whole 360, what we call development. So that's how we actually, start from a story idea and you are building and working with the team, but you're also very much aware of that creativity and the lens, which is really important. So in all of our case here with this panel, we all have different cultural and, there's different intersectional backgrounds, but we're all bringing in different forms what we would call a disability-led lens, or in my case as well, identify with the lived experience of mental health issues, and just opening up the gaze, I suppose, to how stories are told, not just in a marginalised way, but right in the mainstream. And that's what that program was all about. I'm going to go to Caroline now, and you're recently back in Melbourne where you grew up, but you've been in the UK for like 16 years, I think it was.
Yeah.
And in the last few months, I've actually invited you to be on a number of panels relating to the screen industry.
Yeah.
Because the reason in my mind it all makes sense is that this isn't as much about understanding disability arts culture and lived experience and how we can inform the screen medium and the sector, and I suppose I just touched on about space as well, and that's something you talk about like owning space. And
I mean, I think that's been the biggest. So I was in the UK for 16 years where I was a maker of and a performer and also, I suppose, a leader or advocate, whichever way you want to go with it. And I think the biggest, I mean, it's been fascinating being involved in the conversations around screen because I wasn't necessarily connected to it at all in the UK. But in terms of the presence of disability on screen, it felt like there was much more of that in the UK. It was much more normalised. It was much more every day. And if I think about various TV programs that were on UK TV, there's been a real focus. There's also been commitment from the BBC to ensure that they're actually committing to employing people with disability.
I've read about that. That's really admirable.
Yeah, I think one of the other really interesting things that's happened has been around screen advertising. So I read some stats recently. So Mars, the Mars Bar Company, connected to the Paralympics last year, decided that they would launch a series of advertisements that included disabled performers. So one of them had British Sign Language users, so they just spoke in sign language. There were also various people with different disabilities but the focus was on the Maltesers and very much about them not sharing Maltesers, whatever it was. And the stats have come out that indicated that that's been their most successful advertising campaign ever.
wow.
So they had kind of given themselves a really low target of a 4% kind of take up of Maltesers in the time, and actually that doubled. So it's a really strong kind of I suppose direction to advertisers to kind of go, well, it works in advertising. Let's talk about film and screen. I think for me, one of the biggest differences between the UK and here is around leadership and around where, if people are being employed within the arts industry, where are they sitting within that? And are they kind of in apprenticeship type roles, or are they in more kind of director or producer or writer roles?
Key creative roles, I mean.
Yeah, so where I'm really interested in that as the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also just hearing Emily talk about the Screenability project where she was matched with Matchbox Films. Yeah, and just that real focus on looking at who's the best match for you, and this thing about the difference that would have come to Matchbox Pictures, and they've absolutely, where they were on a panel that we were on recently, and their now ongoing commitment to working with involving other artists with disability is really significant. And I think that's one of the things that more and more I'm trying to reinforce to the arts industry here and the film industry is this kind of absolutely mutual benefit that comes, mutual advantage that comes from employing disabled creatives within the system, within their organisations.
I see you ideally placed with that, Carolyn, because I think of you as a thought leader and a community leader.
Oh, thanks, Adie.
Yeah.
I like it.
Oh, no, thank you. And I think what we'll jump into now is just to talk about a couple of specific projects. So Emily, the Milky Pop Kid, and we're on it, is opening the Other Film Festival.
Woo-hoo!
So the Other Film Festival in Melbourne will be running from the Thursday the 22nd of November to Saturday the 24th of November, and it's based at the Cooper's Malthouse Theatre in Southbank. But the Milky Pop Kid is directed by Joanna Garvin, who I no doubt is your friend and colleague, but she's as the director, she's also a woman with disability, and you actually act in this film, but you're one of the writers as well.
I also co-wrote it, yes, with Joanna and my other co-star, Telvin.
So do you want to just tell us a little bit about that film and that process, and or even how you came up with the idea, or
Yeah, sure. So the Milky Bob kid, it was funny. Joanna approached me and wanted to make originally a documentary about my life and my work because she's a documentary filmmaker. But she had been given money from a program called My Life, My Art, and the producers that were in charge of that sort of wanted to push the envelope a little bit more and see what we could do that was a bit more interesting than, you know, just me. So we sat down and had a coffee and we were thinking about the kinds of films we wanted to make, and we got to talking about that hot button issue of diverse representation in film, and specifically the critical acclaim that able-bodied actors often get for portraying characters with disabilities at the expense of actual artists with disabilities. So we decided to make a mockumentary film about an actor who wanted to do some research and consultation with an artist with disability because he wants to get a gold Logie, and he thinks that portraying a character with disability is going to be the way to do that. So yeah, that was the Milky Pop Kid. Apologies, my phone, I think, just went off just then.
We didn't hear it.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, and that's what, you know, it really is sort of, it is a mockumentary, but it is a drama film as well, in terms of you do really explore the whole concept behind authentic casting and have a lot of fun with it. So as I say, we're honored and excited that you're opening our film festival.
We are so honored. Yeah, the team is just so honored for that.
Are we going to talk a bit about authentic casting?
We can jump into that now.
Just because yesterday, Arts Access Victoria at the moment is leading a training program with CEOs of arts organisations, primarily in Melbourne, that's called ADAPT. So it's about arts organisations developing disability action plans. So it's the training to work with them for them to develop their.
Can you just give me 1 second? Sorry. My support worker is changing over shifts.
No,
Sorry about that.
I will call Tara. I'll get her
Okay.
out here. Don't worry
Thank you.
about that.
All right, I'm back. Thank you. Sorry.
Not at all. And yesterday, one of the things that we were talking about was about authentic casting. And with the team here has made this incredible montage of 59 images of people either holding their Academy Awards or the films that the Academy Awards came from that depicted the lives of disabled people with authentic casting. And it was just fascinating, the conversation that came from that, because there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
And I think one of the main things that emerged yesterday was the real need. It's still an issue for us because there's no sense of equality. And once we've got a sense of equality and we can all play whatever the roles are that we want to play, then we'll stop having this conversation, stop whinging about there not being authentic casting. But until we get to that point, we will continue to push this and make people more and more aware of it. But it was really interesting, the kind of conversation that surrounded that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. So we're having it at that level, which is really, really important.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, there is that term crip face and cripping up, and which is often used to describe, you know, what authentic casting actually isn't. But it's a space thing it's still I mean, in theory, an actor should be able to play any role, But when we're seeing very limited representation of all kinds of people, let alone, you know, only disabled people, and within that there's many different intersections. I think that's quite similar with storytelling as well. You know, it's almost it comes down a lot to what the power and the privilege is. So if we're just constantly privileging one lens, which for a long time in the, you know, in the Western world has been the white male able-bodied canon, then nothing will change. And to be honest, it becomes pretty boring. So moving on to that, Adi, do you want to talk a little bit about the project you're developing? You know, it's still in development. Sit down comedy. Talk. You can let us know. You've got development money from Screen Australia, and you've just shot a proof of concept.
Yes, we just shot the footage for the proof of concept video. It's in post production now, but it is, as we all, I mean, it is a work in progress. But yes, but really on the subject of giving this theme of authentic casting, the real key to what I say is that, and probably for a friend of my notes, but a pivotal initial move was in establishing clarity for the project's inclusion themed vision, objective, and purpose. So I then applied my many learnings gained from the developer workshop to include 10 people with disabilities in the cast. That's just the cast. So, you know, that's, and well, I'm showing you images while I'm talking to you to give you an idea of, can you still hear me as I speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see some images there going. So in the cast is everyone from Senator Jordan Steele John from Western Australia, a buddy of mine from the former Disability Media Australia board who has cerebral palsy. I've also had several other wheelchair users and who use various walking frames and aids. So yes, there are. So that's being authentic and real. This causes me my little time machine wheelchair there.
And so do you want to talk? That was a bit of a coup getting Senator Jordan Steele to be in your comedy proof of concept.
Well, he's a young guy. He's 23. So, you know, I got an idea of what his humor would be like. I mean, the first game changer for us is when we approached Arts Access Victoria for a place to have the to hold a writers' room brainstorm sessions, and Arts Access Victoria were very, very supportive and encouraging in providing a facility that is such a great purpose-built, disability-friendly environment. And yes, and stemming from that, Kate, my associate producer, then approached Senator Jordan Steele's media advisor to invite him to be involved in the project. He was very excited to, and I saw him actually when he came to Melbourne for a Greens meeting, youth meeting, and he was a very funny guy, and I just yelled out, "Hey, my brother in wheels!" You know, and so yeah, he was. We connected pretty well straight away, and yeah, so you can see images there of from snapshots, happy snaps of our production days. So yes, that was a very rewarding experience, and it was very important for us that we made sure people felt respected and honoured. So we made sure we paid everyone from our mega modest development seed funding. We made sure that everyone was remunerated fairly, because that's one thing that's always been a tough thing for people with disability, is being able to generate income again. So it was a great, satisfying for me to make sure that as producer, I could help facilitate the love, you know, and respect. And so the other thing there is that, sorry, am I speaking clearly enough?
Yeah, no, you are.
Yeah, it was very rewarding knowing that we're doing the right thing. Because, you know, I work with a very strong moral compass, so that's why I need to navigate my way through life. And Kate keeps me honest as my primary care wife and chief of staff. So yes, we get through it. And the centre was involved, and also I also was able to tap into people I've worked for before in my earlier professional life, and I've got a good buddy of mine who I used to work with in English language comedy in Singapore, who recently was directing the current season of True Story with Hamish and Andy, and is now also recently finished directing for How to Stay Married with Pete Hellier, Network 10. So it's very, very inclusive. We wanted to have that vibe of inclusion and mutual respect and spreading love, I'd say, in a non-creepy kind of way.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Zadie, and we're all very excited to see sit-down comedy on our screens. So broadcasters.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Well, not on screen yet, Fiona, but hopefully if someone here listening who connected to a network who could be an attached broadcaster, then please feel free to contact me anytime.
Well, yeah, we'll use this.
We have SBS one networks here, but I obviously I wanted to evolve into something more substantive as we continue on.
Yeah.
And that's my next step, is to deliver to submit the deliverables for Screen Australia funding and explore other opportunities there are for with Film Victoria or other agencies, or even to the business sector. Yeah, right. And we're talking about also with Film Victoria ready for writers attachments. One of the artists is writers.
No, that all sounds great, Adie. And I know too you mentioned about coming down and using the space at Arts Access Victoria for your writers' room. So I'm just going to hand to Caroline, and we're going to talk a little bit about the other film festival. But to place it in context, I mean, the other film festival is like, well, this year anyway, a flagship program of the organisation.
Completely.
So do you want to just talk a little bit about disability, I suppose the context of disability arts culture, because that's a really big thing to me. With the screen sector or with any part of the arts, we are talking about access and getting people involved and being part of the mainstream or wherever they want to be, but it's also acknowledging it's not just about getting in the room, it's about acknowledging that we have our own lived experiences and that there is this whole wide way of working and respect for disability arts culture in itself, which is an incredible creative thing, and I just feel can be really, in terms of visual storytelling and cinematic storytelling, really.
Yes, I should add to that, Fiona, that I become almost passionate, obsessed with the idea that we all have value, you know, and that's what we bring with us to any occasion.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Caroline will just you've got something?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just to kind of go back and think about that the other film festival was conceived in response to the lack of opportunities for people with disabilities to view their community on film. Like there just was none of it.
Yeah.
And so the other film festival started as a direct response to that. And you've been really articulate about the lenses through which we see the world. But I think that disability culture is still, it's really around us, but we don't, it's almost so ingrained in us that we don't articulate it. And there are very few opportunities, I suppose, for us to come together and celebrate that, to develop any sense of disability pride, all of those sorts of things. And I think that's been a really different thing as well. Here in the UK, there's a biannual festival that's called the Unlimited Festival, which is a kind of commissioning and showcasing platform for the work of disabled artists and disabled and deaf artists, and it's amazing. And it happens at the South Bank in London, which is a kind of prestigious venue, and it's one of the highlights for the team at South Bank every 2 years is Unlimited comes, and there's something about, and the disability community comes together at that stage, and it's a real opportunity for people to come and support and see themselves and their stories online. And I feel like all together. And I feel like the other film festival is one of those rare occasions for us to actually come together, to see ourselves as a community and to really start to grow our disability pride. There's a fantastic Melbourne-based artist called Larissa McFarlane, who's been doing a lot of work around disability pride, and as part of Melbourne Festival this year, Fringe Festival, she put up a mural, basically a disability pride mural on a wall in Footscray. And it just, again, was an amazing opportunity for the community to come together. Larissa's a brilliant collaborator and just really worked with everybody for them to have a voice in that. And I feel like more and more we need to be creating those spaces for voices that are quietened a lot or completely silenced to have a chance to come out. And the other film festival is one of those opportunities. And
that really resonated with me, Caroline. Thank you.
No worries.
No, thank you, Caroline. And I mean, I won't go into all the session details other than say, you know, after the session, you can head to our website, which is otherfilmfestival.com, and you'll see all the programming of our screen, of a whole lot of different screen events, from opening night on the Thursday to Our World, Our Shorts on Friday morning to we've got a program called Design from Lived Experience, which will be on the Friday afternoon. And then on Friday night, our Friday night gala, we have a feature film from Ireland called Sanctuary. And it very much is a comedy where, you know, it's a comedy drama, but it's also like was made in the mainstream system over there and has won a couple of different awards at kind of not just disability film festivals, but film festivals in the UK. And then we have the final day on the Saturday. There's a mixture of different film screenings and then an industry panel on the Saturday afternoon. But one of the things that you know is definitely happening at the moment, and it is exciting, but some of us have been lobbying for it for a long time. There does seem this momentum of the change that, and you know, we were just Caroline and I were just in Meeting Place, which is the National Disability Arts and Culture Conference. Happens once a year, and this year it was in Alice Springs, and I facilitated another. A similar kind of panel to this called the Film Futures panel in Alice Springs, and we had Lisa Duff from Screen Australia and also Courtney Gibson, who is not only currently the CEO of the South Australian Film Corporation, but he's also the current chair of the SDIN, which is now a new, it's new in the last year or so, the Screen Diversity Inclusion Network. So all the Australian broadcasters, film funding agencies and some of the other guilds, including the Screen Producers and the Directors Guild, members of, and AFTRS are members of this SDIN, which is absolutely committed to making change and changing culture and for diversity and inclusion, including disability. And there's something that Courtney said, which was kind of quoting Elvis, but she said a little less consultation and a little more action. And I kind of got a laugh at the time, but definitely
less consultation.
You know, Courtney,
Cool.
watching, and definitely we are seeing things happening nationally, like we mentioned, through Screen Australia. And there's another initiative that just came out publicly yesterday from the ABC, and I'll talk about that a little more by the end of the session. But all the state screen agencies, even Caroline and I this week had a meeting with Film Victoria, and that was incredibly positive and encouraging. Yeah. And you know, I think there's a combination. it's not even right to say watch this space. I think the space, we can demand the space and take over the space. And Mike, you've got some great theories around space.
So I was recently lucky enough to go to Unlimited in London and had a conversation with a brilliant disabled artist from the States. And he was talking about, he asked the question about how are we holding space for disabled artists to be able to come in, or artists with disabilities to enter the industry. And it kind of sparked three questions in my head to bring back to this to Arts Access Victoria. One was about how are we making space? How are we making space for conversations, for action, for disabled artists to join us on the journey? How are we bringing on the next generation as well in that? How are we making space to bring the next generation through? How are we holding space within various organisations to allow that, more of that to come through? And then the third thing is that as artists with disability, how are we taking space? How are we kind of making our ways in, but then how are we holding and kind of taking that space once we're in?
So in terms of being the next generation or the ambassadors of that role?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it ties in with the question here that we're going to talk about. So how is disability challenging and changing the mainstream screen sector? And I was just going to read out just a very short, the brief we've been working to for programming around this year's The Other Film Festival. So our aim is to present a visionary local and international screening program of an inclusive society where disabled and deaf communities are the centre of the storytelling, not marginalised, imitated or spoken about. And that, I suppose, comes back to authentic casting, the importance of disability-led screen projects, that it's actually it's our own voices. We're the ones telling the story. The things, it's so often in the past, things have been made about us or without consultation.
I think more and more one of the things that as artists with disability we need to start thinking about is, where do we want to get to? Who do we want to work with? What do we want to see happen?
You mean what's the end game?
And I think it's important. Sorry. I think it's important to realise that for every artist with disability, that might be completely different.
Absolutely. But I think one of the things that I'm really keen to do with the artists, especially that we work with here at AAV, is working with them to kind of articulate it, because I think we've been absent from that for so long that just to do anything would be great.
Yes.
But then it's that thing about, but who do you really want to work with? Where do you really want to get to? What is it that you really want to make? What's the film you want to make? Where do you want it to be screened? All of those things. That's the thing that I'm really keen to do, is how do we articulate that better? Because all of these opportunities are emerging and we as a sector have been really developed. So now it's like, how do those two things come together?
But Caroline, speaking from a cinema comedy point of view, for me, one of the big key end games is to create change in the mainstream.
Yep.
And this all adds, as Fiona knows, my passion and obsession with MAD, or making a difference.
Yeah.
Part of it, So, I mean, just taking back what we were talking about before about developing developer, Fiona, I mean, with creative endeavours, for me, it's all. Sorry. With professional endeavours where I work, I like to focus on positive growth, scaling, leveraging. With creative endeavours, my focus is on nourishing the soul and being the difference that I want to be changed here,
Yeah.
And that's, and
so
I think
that's cheesy.
there's a question for me still about, how do we know when we've got there? Like in terms of your end game.
Yes.
Absolutely influencing the mainstream. And I think it's that thing about, does that mean that we have
representation is a big part of it.
Yep. Great.
Yeah.
But I think, just as some people live by the adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I subscribe to the thought of always striving for continual improvement.
Yeah.
And that, and as Einstein once said, anyone who made a mistake has never tried anything new. So, of course I expect to tweak as I go,
Yeah.
And I've been very active in asking people who I work with for feedback, because I want to get better and better and better as we go. So,
Yeah.
even for the proof of concept video, I'll ask people for feedback, good, bad, regular, to what you think, share your thoughts, please.
Yeah.
And what do you think, Emily?
It is just about that continual striving for improvement. It is, obviously there is an end game for me, and there are things and goals that I want to achieve, but also bigger picture wise, there's never going to be, oh, we've achieved that now. Like, that's not going to be a thing. But yeah, so it is that continual improvement. And again, as you say, asking for feedback and making sure that we're on the right track and all those things.
I agree, Emily. I don't think I'll ever say, okay, everyone, job done, mission accomplished. I will more say, we're going well, let's keep building on it,
Yeah. And I think that thing about artists actually taking control of that feedback is really great.
Yes.
So,
and take responsibility for it. Yeah.
But also as artists, we get given feedback whether we want it or not a lot of the time.
Yes.
And so there's something about being able to allocate the times that happens and being able to structure the way that we get that feedback. So if there's specific things, being able to talk to people about that.
Yeah, and I mean, a big thing in the screen sector is, it's, there are some grant opportunities, but a lot of it is still working with the marketplace, what we call the marketplace, which can be, broadcasters, or in the case of feature films, sales agents. And and one thing, definitely with the Screen Australia was, did with the developer was actually going, well, we want to put a whole lot of people out there that will be right at the start, at the beginning, where decisions are being made and stories are being developed. Because the other thing is, it's as much about who's assessing these projects or who's choosing these projects and the lens and the understanding of the world that they're bringing in. So something I know, for example, like the Natalie Miller Fellowship, has been very focused on developing women to get into those sort of more sort of, dare I say, business side of the film industry. So distributors and exhibitors and sales agents and kind of, whether even programming, because we needed it's a starting point to get a more diversity of lens. And I think of the lens assessing and making decisions. And I think that needs to happen more with disability as well, not just in the screen sector, but I think in the wider arts as well, because we can come up with all the projects we want, but so often it may just be, oh, we had disability last week. Well, hey, no, there's 20% of the population, and then if you include mental health and carers, it's quickly up to 25%, and you keep going. So it's like, no, this isn't a tokenistic thing. This is a whole way of living and being and experiencing the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Fiona, we are from the ultimate arts meets commerce industry.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Emily, is there anything else you wanted to sort of add? How did you find being in, I know that we talked about with your attachment, because that's a big thing in the screen sector, signing a confidentiality agreement about going into a writer's room. But we talked about, actually, rather than the things you can't talk about, actually just some people, especially if you're starting out, wouldn't know about that process, and that you could maybe talk about that.
Yeah, look, so I was in 2 different writers' rooms across my month-long internship with Matchbox Pictures. One was a comedy and one was something different. One was more established and one was more emerging. And I think being in an environment like that was really awesome because you just go into a room for 3 days or 5 days or whatever, and you're learning on the job from all these established writers, things around character development, story development, the logistics of how things get done and what's going to work and what's not. And look, I just found it a really enlightening experience in terms of how the industry works and how my work and the work of other artists I know might fit within the Australian arts industry sort of landscape. And it really gave me hope because my perspective and my insights, as much as they could be, were taken into consideration whenever that was appropriate. So I had a really great time.
Do you feel?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I'm really interested in. Do you feel like that time has now changed your practice?
Yes, I mean, in those rooms I was working mainly in TV, and so I don't work predominantly in TV. That's somewhere I want to extend into, but certainly, writing skills and honing my craft certainly influences my practice.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd following on for this in terms of getting an incredible opportunity that we've known sort of there's been coming for a while because it was kind of had a soft launch at Meeting Place in Alice Springs by Lisa Duff, who was there from Screen Australia, had permission from the ABC to announce it, but it was formally came live yesterday, and it's called Disrupted. And it's an initiative through ABC Me, which is the children's channel here in Australia, and it's in partnership with Screen Australia. But it's basically an opportunity. They're saying here, would you like to make a sketch comedy, factual program, scripted comedy or drama for ABC Me about the experience of a person with disability living in Australia today? Then Disrupted is for you. ABC Content and Screen Australia have partnered on an exciting new initiative to support and showcase the best of Australia's next generation of content makers with disability. So the submissions, as I said, opened yesterday and they close on the 12th of December. If you Google search Disrupted and ABC TV or ABC ME, that will come up with all the details and what it's about. But that's really exciting because it's based on a similar model that was done last year for the Day of the Girl, and there was some really innovative and quite different TV programs or short films that were developed, and they can be up to 20 minutes long. So for in the role as a key creative, either as a producer, writer and or director, to have the opportunity to do this, but to get that mainstream broadcaster credit and have the support and working very much within the context of the lived experience of disability, let alone the end results of what will be on the screen, is just really exciting. And I don't quite know that there's any other initiative like that anywhere in the world at the moment. So we're incredibly privileged to have this opportunity here in Australia, and there'll be more, I'm sure.
And I would discourage us from using the words privilege.
Yes, I was.
Because
I do really feel that we do live in exciting times, and I really feel a shift of consciousness, in with at executive management level and in screen culture level. So,
yeah,
and I see that trickling down to having real challenges for me as a creator and and key creative is that bring my sort of developer / producer head on. I still see the challenge and excitement of being able to nurture sit-down comedy to fulfill its optimal creative and industry potential.
yeah,
Which will be a great challenge. I'm sure bloody frustrating at times, but also a great challenge, very fulfilling, but also extremely worthwhile and very much in my life, including my life's purpose. So in the tradition of reframing, I think, well, rather than feeling I'm being pushed by a deadline, try to think I'm being pulled towards my purpose. That feels better, Yeah.
And I think Disrupted has come. It's a massive opportunity at the right time, and it feels like it's kind of been building to this, which is great. And I think my reaction to the word privilege is because it's just like it's time actually.
Yeah, it should.
And yeah, I know she just
Like,
using the word privilege in the back of my mind. I'll just say this quickly, sorry, that I'm just aware, like we've got, I mean, the US is a very different situation, but and I know that, but we do have, we're a smaller country, and that's many of the reasons why we have government funding around the screen industry and the ABC and SBS. But I suppose that's partly where I've got in my mind too, that I know some incredibly fierce film disability advocates, particularly based in the US. Dominic Lewis Evans comes to mind, and with incredible hashtag film dis, and we've actually commissioned Jackie Brown to do an article, and she just interviewed Dominic yesterday. And this will be part of the other film festival. So that's where I was doing that. But absolutely agree with you. Like, and this shouldn't just be about one initiative. It should be just across the board. But yeah.
And it's exciting. Sorry, Emily, you were going to jump in.
Yes.
Yeah, no, as much as I don't like to get caught up in semantics of language, while it is a privilege for all these things to be happening, we probably, it shouldn't have to be called that, because it should just be what it is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
I mean, I think the really exciting thing about the Disrupted program is they're offering kind of 4 of them. So it's not just one opportunity. So they're looking at they're making 4 programs, which is really great, rather than just saying there's just one and we'll choose the best one. But actually, there's 4 opportunities, which is really great. And they've all got some significant money attached. And that's one of the big things that I have also realised in terms of the difference between the UK and here, is just the importance of long-term significant investment in the work of artists with disability. Because change takes a really long time, and it's not a tick box exercise, and it's not a flash in the pan, because disability is non-discriminatory. And it covers everybody. Everyone's just as eligible as anyone else.
I hear you, sister.
Yeah.
And also, I also agree with the idea of the merit of thinking of more than just ourselves and beyond just the here and now. Let's be more legacy focused, oriented too. It's, I think, that what we do resonate in eternity.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an aside, but one of the things that I've started to do, as well as acknowledging the land on which we meet, is acknowledging all those disability advocates and fighters that have come and gone before us, that have allowed us to be in these places to have these conversations.
Like, from my friend and former CEO of Disability Media Australia, Sarah Barton, has been a great advocate and very proactive in that role?
Well, we have Sarah's film Defiant Lives is in the other film festival, and we also have at Art Texas Victoria the Leslie Hall Scholarship Award, and two of the recent over the last couple of years
Don't
scholars.
forget to include yourself there, Fiona, to me.
So that Leslie Hall.
What you do, okay?
Yeah, no, thank you, Adi. I was just gonna say we've got two films in the film festival. One's called Gaslit by Naomi Chaney, and the other is called Stim Your Heart Out, which
What are you heart out?
Stim
Your Heart Out,
Okay.
which is about a group of workshops facilitated and developed by Proof Stevenson, and the film was directed by Akasha Temple. But both Prue and Naomi had received Leslie Hall scholarships, and Leslie was incredibly fierce advocate and is featured in Defiant Lives, which you can see at the other film festival. So
come to the other film festival.
yes,
I wish I could.
Yeah,
I know. But hopefully, like next year too, that this year we did a touring program, but there'll be more opportunities, hopefully to take films and create more events, interstate as well.
Yeah,
And
cool.
where thanks to the Emerging Writers Festival and Digital Writers Festival team for programming us into this festival and having us, because it allows us to have not just a Melbourne and Victorian-based focus, but a national and potentially international conversation, which is incredibly important and becomes powerful in terms of community.
Yeah. But you guys, congrats and mazel tov to you all at the other film festival, okay?
Thanks
you so much, Sadie.
You gained any thought it is that you are.
We have we've got a thank you from Lynn, who's behind the scenes, being our, as we were saying, 80, once upon a time this would have been like a live multicam situation, but is now done on Google Hangouts. But also I think just shows how, that I think we can own the means of production a lot more. And that's where a lot of the exciting screen work is coming from now. It's on YouTube, it's on through web series, through crossovers into podcasts and, other forms of writing. And I think as artists, but as filmmakers, as writers, and it's a term that you said to me recently, Caroline, we can think of ourselves as portfolio artists, and very much how the screen world is, moving. It's all about multi-platform, and it's your project. It's not just having like the one sort of film. You've also got to, be working, how are you going to reach your audience, whether that's on, ABC, has free to air, but it has ABC iView, it has all its web and social media channels. So all of these things, to however you kind of can reach who you want to speak to and connect with, but is seen as the audience in the screen world, helps to, really develop your CV and portfolio to show the world to go out and do more of what you want to do.
Yeah.
So thank you, Emily, Adi.
Thank you.
It's been an honour being involved.
And Caroline. Thank you so much, and thank you again to the Digital Writers Festival, to Izzy Roberts-Law and Lynn and everyone over there at Level 3 at the Wheeler Centre.
Great stuff, team. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much.
Lovely hanging out.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.